As we approach the midterm elections, and many of the races are on razor's edge, with recounts most likely, it's well to examine the history of 2008, when Al Franken was elected senator, defeating Norm Coleman, the Republican candidate. Franken, of course, was the Democrat. Many regard this race as sort of a textbook example of how to steal an election. The Secretary of State of Minnesota, who was in charge of this election, was a guy named Mark Ritchie, who is a Democrat. And there's real evidence that from the very beginning of this process, it was rigged in Franken's favor. On election day, Norm Coleman defeated Al Franken by 726 votes, admittedly a very small margin. As we approached a few days after Election Day, based on corrections made by the Secretary of State, Mark Ritchie, and the local canvassing boards, almost all of whom were controlled by the Democrats, Coleman's lead dropped to 215 votes. Then, when challenges were heard to some of the ballots, the challenges were resolved 2-1 in Franken's favor, and it swung the election to a 49-vote lead for Franken. And then finally, when the absentee ballots were counted, which usually are heavily Republican, and many of them were challenged, the challenges were resolved again 2-1 in favor of Franken. So the result was that Franken won the election by about 200 votes. And by the way, I ought to note that 1,400 votes were cast by felons who may not have had the right to vote. The point is, the Democratic establishment in Minnesota worked together with the courts and the election officials and the Secretary of State really to steal a Senate seat. And at the time, the stakes were quite high. That seat was an integral part of the Democratic takeover of the Senate. So as we move into the midterms now, we need to be aware of this and need to be very focused on protecting the seats that we win at the ballot box. While we're all focused on the midterm election results, there is a caravan of immigrants streaming toward the United States. They probably won't get here by Election Day, but they probably will shortly thereafter. And this is a caravan that has been incentivized by the treatment previous caravans have had, which is that they've largely been dispersed throughout the United States and continue to live here happily in the expectation of citizenship. And with that amnesty de facto, these caravans are forming and streaming to the United States. Folks, we have 7 billion people in the world, many of whom would like to be in America. And if we let too many of them in, we'll sink the ship, even as they want to join it. So it is very important that we keep that caravan out. There's already one forming behind it. What we need is the troops that Trump is sending to the border to stand decisively at the border and stop people from coming in. If they do enter, they should be apprehended and put in tents while we're adjudicating the case. Keeping families together, but holding them together, not releasing them together. So please sign the petition that's appended to this so that we can really make our opinions felt. Thanks for watching. In yesterday's Lunch Alert, I talked about the tightness of the midterm elections. Well, there's nothing tight or hard to read about the change in the economy. The personal income data that just came out is unbelievable. It is astonishing. There's been a 3% increase in personal income year over year, third quarter to third quarter, which is unbelievable. That's real, that's after inflation. And the odds are it'll go up to 4%. So that means the average American household that has a median family income had a median family income of $60,000 last year, now has a median family income of $62,500. A dramatic, enormous gain. And the highest it's ever been since this measurement has been conducted. Here's the history. In 2000, we were at $60,000 of income. And then it dropped down to $55,000 of income after the 2012 crash. and then it rose back up again to $60,000 of income when Obama left office. So under Obama and Bush, there was a V, down and then up. And it ended up in the same place at 60,000. In 17, there were only slight changes. But in 18, it's gone from 60,000 at the moment to 63,000 and probably up to 64,000. Unbelievable increases. And this is not just macroeconomic statistics. This is averaging it and looking down, trickling down, if you will, drilling down to each individual household. It's adjusted for inflation. It's an unbelievable statistic. So it's incredible to see the elections so tight and the economy so decisive in rendering its verdict. Why does this happen? Well, good economic news sometimes is not a great issue. Bad economic news always is. But good economic news are like, well, we didn't have a blizzard today, or we didn't have a hurricane today. It's newsworthy when we do, but it's not newsworthy when we don't. And it may be that Americans are taking this for granted. God help us if we get a Democratic Congress, because this will all stop. But we have to see. Have to trust the voters. Have to trust the Lord. The midterm elections are tight, tight, tight. As we sit here on Thursday with the election on Tuesday, it's premature to call any conclusion as to control of either house. Americans are capable of having one main subject in their mind at any given time. The point is, though, it changes over 24 or 48 hours. And the focus on the Kavanaugh hearings and the Democratic conduct during it has largely eroded. And now the focus is on the violence of the last week, the mailings of bombs to prominent Democrats and the horrible, horrible killings in Pittsburgh. And those have at least changed the subject and in many cases impelled a move toward the Democrats. And the result has been basically a closure of all of these races. So here's the rundown as I see it right now. In the House, it is crazy to make a prediction. It might even be several days or weeks or even months before we know who controls the House. There will be so many races that are going to have recounts and going to be litigated and going to spend some time trying to determine who won those races. There are currently 18 House races out of 435 that are within 2 points or less. Unbelievable. 2 of them are right now tied in the polls. 9 of them are within 1 point one way or the other, and 7 are 2 points one way or the other. And that's within the margin of error of the polling. So you really have no idea who's ahead in those races. The Democrats are slightly ahead in the number of seats that are more or less decided. 5 ahead, or according to one tally, or 9 ahead according to another. But there's so many seats out there that it could go either way in a relatively lopsided direction. Or it could be the razor's edge closeness that we're looking at now. And the Senate races have tightened too. We're not going to have a 54 or 55 seat majority. We probably will have a majority, but it might be less. And it is possible that we could lose the majority, or have a 50-50 Senate where Pence would break the tie for Republican control. We're looking very good for a pickup in North Dakota. And Arizona and Nevada, both Republican seats, are now in question. They used to be clearly Republican, but now they're in question. And Missouri is looking like a possible pickup, but not necessarily a done deal. If that were to happen, and we were to pick up seats in North Dakota and Missouri, and possibly lose them in Nevada and Arizona, you'd still have the 51-49 Senate that we have now. And there are 3 seats which are possible Republican pickups that may be just out of reach or at the borderline of reach. We could win them, but we more likely will lose them. Montana, Indiana, and Florida. Indiana having shifted in the last few days. And Florida, the Republicans insist that their polls have them ahead, but the last 3 published polls have the Democrats ahead. Montana has been stubbornly a 2 or 3 point Democratic lead. Trump's going out there, and we don't know what the outcome is. So, I'm sorry, it's just impossible to tell at this point. Turnout will obviously be the key variable. Now, in off-year elections, Democratic turnout is always lower because a large portion of it is dependent on minority voters who tend not to vote unless one of their own is on the ballot. So Black and Latino turnout in most districts will be lower than it is during a presidential year, particularly a presidential year when Obama is on the ballot. And on the other hand, there's real enthusiasm at the left, a crazy enthusiasm. But conservatives are really energized. The Kavanaugh hearings have really done their work, and people understand what a crazy band of leftists, almost revolutionaries, the Democratic Party has become. And they're energized. We're energized by the thought of Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. You bet we're energized. So this is a collision between 2 fierce forces, both mobilized, both intent on victory, immovable objects hitting undeniable forces. And God knows what the outcome is. I'm sorry not to be more definite, but that's the way it is. Well, we're all focused on the midterm election results. There is a caravan of immigrants streaming toward the United States. They probably won't get here by Election Day, but they probably will shortly thereafter. And this is a caravan that has been incentivized by the treatment previous caravans have had, which is that they've largely been dispersed throughout the United States and continue to live here happily in the expectation of citizenship. And with that amnesty de facto, these caravans are forming and streaming to the United States. Folks, we have 7 billion people in the world, many of whom would like to be in America. And if we let too many of them in, we'll sink the ship, even as they want to join it. So it is very important that we keep that caravan out. There's already one forming behind it. What we need is the troops that Trump is sending to the border to stand decisively at the border and stop people from coming in. If they do enter, they should be apprehended and put in tents while we're adjudicating the case. Keeping families together, but holding them together, not releasing them together. So please sign the petition that's appended to this so that we can really make our opinions felt. Thanks for watching.
I have to talk about this walkaway movement that when the walkaway march happened over the weekend, Brandon Strack's march, and Candace Owens was also there with what she is calling hilariously Blexit, which is the black exit from the Democrat Party. And it was really moving. I mean, thousands of people showed up for the march, but also to see the young black political leaders who showed up for personal meeting with President Trump, and were so thrilled to see him and were so pro-American. One of these guys was asked, he was wearing a MAGA hat, and he was asked, when was America great? When was America great? And here is part of his response.
She asked me the question, on my hat, when was America great? I answered it like this. America has been great from the very start because this nation was founded on the principles of freeing us from tyranny. Okay, there was slaves and so forth, but there were a lot of people of all colors, let's say white, in this nation that did not feel like that was correct. And this nation from that time has been moving out of tyranny, from bondage in one way or another, whether it be from Britain or whether it be from slavery as a whole. In case she doesn't know, there was a civil war. And in part, I say in part, a whole lot of white people, if you look at history, died because they wanted this nation and people like myself to be free. I believe that. Wait a minute, let me get myself together.
Get it together, you're fine.
Because when you talk about this country, I do love the country.
Yeah, he loves it, and I got to say, like we so want people to come back to not just walk away from the radical left, walk away from the Democrat Party, walk away from identity politics. Identity politics is, I've said it a million times, say it again, identity politics is racism with a smiley face. The melting pot was the right idea. The melting pot that we are all Americans is the right idea. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot have it both ways. I really pray that people like Brandon and Candace will turn this movement into something big. It's not about President Trump. President Trump will come and go. It is about this country. It is about all of us understanding that we are here under the creed of equality, under the creed of freedom, of individual liberty, of individual rights, of the individual pursuit of happiness, that we are here as a community of individuals doing these things together. It does not matter. That truly it does not matter.
I welcome to the program Ann Coulter, our great friend of the show, the author of In Trump We Trust, Pluribus Awesome, and the new book, Resistance is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Has Lost Its Collective Mind. I've been telling my audience, but I'm a layperson, that I believe the 14th Amendment has been misinterpreted, but it doesn't take a change in the law or the change in the Constitution for the federal government to say, no, we're no longer issuing passports to children whose parents came in illegally and had them. We're gonna stop doing it. That's what they can do at that level.
Of course,
right.
Every president should have done this. It's nonsense that comes from an aside dicta, which is in a court opinion, in a Justice Brennan opinion, a footnote in a 1982 decision. Justice Brennan just casually says, well, I don't really see any difference in the children of legal immigrants and illegal immigrants. That wasn't the court's ruling. Dicta means it has absolutely no legal consequence. It's just chit-chat on the way to the court's ruling. It has no legal consequence whatsoever. There's no reason for the federal government to be acting as if some law was passed granting the children of illegal alien citizenship. It had no such law. Like I say, has been deliberated and passed by the United States government. It's insane. Why would they do that? Why would anyone do that? Why would our Constitution's founders, much less the framers of the 14th Amendment, do that? The 14th Amendment, as I wrote about this week in my column, was about freed slaves.
Yep.
They were part of the civil rights, or rather Civil War amendments, as they're called. It was all about freed slaves, and now we're living in this upside-down, sicko Alice in Wonderland, like a Frankenstein world, where the 14th Amendment, which was passed to recognize the rights of free blacks in America, is being used to drive down African-American wages in America, to ruin their neighborhoods, to fill up their hospitals so that the Koch brothers can have cheap labor. Every president should have issued this executive order. Yeah, we can't count on Trump being president forever. Not that it seems to matter, since what we get is a promise of an executive order, not an actual executive order. But yeah, Congress should pass the law. But it's a lot easier for a president to just say this isn't constitutional. There's no law that says this. Of course, he should have done that his second day in office. But I remain baffled at the complexity of building a wall. There are walls every place I go. I see lots of walls. It's not like a complicated engineering feat. We're not asking for him to build on the border the World Trade Center with windows on the world at the top and elevators, and I don't need to be served chocolate mousse on the 110th floor. We want a wall.
And Ann,
build a wall.
You know the Constitution well. You have to appropriate the money, and there is $1.6 billion. I realize that a little bit of that is a cheat.
He's the commander-in-chief. He has power to build a wall. He has a Defense Department.
Not
he has
without
Homeland
money.
Security. This is the very definition of defense. We are being invaded. This is the very definition of Homeland Security. Let's take a poll on this. Do you feel safer, American citizens, having our best young Americans deployed to die pointlessly in Afghanistan, or to build a wall on our border?
I'm completely in favor of it, except for the budgeting part, because appropriating money.
Most of the money money in the federal budget goes to defense and homeland security. You take out the entitlements, that's all the federal government pays for. Well, a lot of slacker employees who get paid more than any of us do and get every single federal vacation, can't be fired, have a self-paced work schedule. Yeah, okay, you get a lot of those. That's expensive. Not as expensive as the entitlements, but Department of Defense and Department of Homeland Security, other than entitlements, they get more money than anything.
Although I realized just a moment ago, I never thought I'd hear the same words on the same subject kind of come out of both Ann Coulter's mouth and Harry Reid's mouth. You realize he also declared the idea of rewarding illegal aliens.
In my book, Adios America, I quote Harry Reid. He said it's insane. What kind of country would do this? Dianne Feinstein used to be fantastic on the issue of illegal immigrants. Pelosi, Obama.
Clinton.
The Democrats figured out that, hey, the illegals, they're kids who we're pretending are citizens. They're all voting for us. Let's keep it going. Let's destroy the people who already live here. We don't like Americans anyway. And Republicans say, hey, the Koch brothers want more cheap labor, and they can keep not raising wages to attract new American workers. So, I thought that was kind of exposed during the 2016 campaign, that we have both political parties aligned against us. That's why we voted for Trump. But all we get from him is chit-chat.
The only thing I defend, and I'm only watching this from the outside, is when a reporter gets wind that the president is talking about going after birthright citizenship, which is the whole point of him talking.
They'll get upset? I think
no, that's not what that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that when they catch wind, like I've caught wind of things, and then I go confront the official and say, hey, are you planning to change this? And Trump, rather than trying some cheat by saying, well, no, we're really not even talking about that, and then 2 weeks from now they come out with something, it jumped the gun a little bit, and the president, I think, smartly said, if he's bringing it up, I'm going to tell him, yeah, we are talking about birthright citizenship. We're going to fix it. But does he have the paperwork dry yet? No. But if it comes out 2 weeks from now.
It's one sentence, Lars. The children of illegal aliens are not United States citizens. The federal government shall not treat them as United States citizens. This is retroactive to the first time we started pretending this, which would probably be around the time of Justice Brennan's 1982 footnote.
Yep.
It's done. I even just made it retroactive.
And I like the idea that it's retroactive. And people say, well, it's horribly inconvenient. I say, yeah, ending slavery was horribly inconvenient, too, for a lot of people. But it was the right thing to do. Ann Coulter is the author most recently of Resistance is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. Thank you, Ann.
The big controversy of the day, because every day a new controversy, that's the theme of today's America. The President of the United States has now said in an interview that he is interested in signing an executive order that would end birthright citizenship for illegal immigrant children. So here is the way the law currently operates. If you come to the United States for virtually any purpose, unless you are a foreign diplomat, you come to the United States and you have a baby in the United States. That baby is automatically a citizen of the United States, entitled to all rights and privileges conferred upon all citizens of the United States. The reason that this is a controversial issue is because nothing in the Constitution actually says that this is the case. Not only does nothing in the Constitution actually say that this is the case, there's pretty good evidence that the framers of the 14th Amendment had no intent to do anything remotely like this. Suggests that just because you come to the United States and then you have a baby here, your baby is now a United States citizen. And this does have some pretty significant costs involved. Right now, you have, in California, we've seen many stories about this. You've had situations where legitimate birth tourism is happening. People are traveling to the United States just to have babies in the United States so that their kids become American citizens. And there's some pretty significant impacts. The Center for Immigration Studies, which is very anti-illegal immigration, they estimate that between 300 and 400,000 children are born to illegal immigrants in the United States every single year, meaning 1 out of every 10 births in the United States is to an illegal immigrant mother. All of those children are considered by the executive branch of the U.S. government to be U.S. citizens, enjoying the same rights and privileges as the children of U.S. citizens. The population of U.S.-born children with illegal alien parents has expanded rapidly from 2.3 million in 2003 to 4 million in 2008. And that does not include children who are 18 years of age or older, so the actual figure is actually somewhat larger. All of the benefits that are available to American citizens are obviously available to these American citizens. There's a lot of talk about illegal immigration not having a tremendous impact on the American economy. because illegal immigrants are barred from federal welfare, for example. Their children, however, are not. And this does lead to chain migration because children are now U.S. citizens and they can sponsor their parents for United States citizenship. The Center for Immigration Studies suggests that many of the welfare costs associated with illegal immigration are due to current birthright citizenship policy. They say greater efforts at barring illegal aliens from federal welfare programs do not reduce costs because the kids are still American citizens. Nationwide, 40% of illegal alien-headed households receive some type of welfare. In some states, the rate is higher. In New York, 49% receive welfare. In California, 48%. Only 19% of households headed by native-born citizens make use of a major welfare program. In other words, illegal aliens who have American citizen children are taking advantage of welfare at exorbitant rates. And states offer additional welfare benefits as well. This is all according to the Center for Immigration Studies. Again, the LA County supervisor estimates that illegal immigration and birthright citizenship cost taxpayers in LA County over $1 billion annually, not including education costs. That's a lot of money. 59% of illegal aliens and their U.S.-born children live in or near poverty. And again, then these kids are able to sponsor their parents for residency in the United States. So there's a lot of talk today about this is racist, this is the Trump administration trying to simply bar people who are differently colored from coming into the United States. No, there are serious economic costs associated with low-income people and low and poorly educated folks who are illegally immigrating to the United States, coming here, having babies, their kids become citizens, and now their kids are entitled to all of the benefits that American citizenship confers. So President Trump suggested today that he could change all of this by executive order. Here's what he said. He said, "It was always told to me that you needed a constitutional amendment. Guess what? You don't." And then he said, "You definitely can do it with an act of Congress." But now they're saying, "I can do it with just an executive order." We're the only country in the world where a person comes in and has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States with all of those benefits. It's ridiculous, and it has to end. Okay, so there are a couple of contentions that he makes here. Contention number one, birthright citizenship is bad policy. I tend to agree with this. I think that birthright citizenship is bad policy. If you're just coming across the border and having a baby in the United States, that does not mean that you have come in through our legal immigration system, and your children are going to be much more impacted, obviously, by their parents than they're going to be impacted simply by force and dint of living in the United States. So if you're interested in a country that assimilates people to American values, you need people immigrating legally and then having babies here legally.